I've got to record on this computer as well, and then share my screen and do it in a way which doesn't break something. Okay, let me put on the slideshow. It is being recorded, isn't it? Yeah.
It is recording, yes.
Yeah, sorry.
This was the previous one, Paul.
You're right, actually. I opened up the wrong one. I opened up the let me just go back to the
No worries.
That's a bit of a crap start, isn't it?
No.
I have actually done like a proper presentation for you, and I've clearly hit the wrong button. Sorry, I'm having a rather dense moment right now. Oh, here it is! Yay!
Hooray! It's all part of the entertainment, Paul.
That is true. That is. Can you
all
see that?
Part of the show. Yes.
Okay, so all right, so this is welcome to Sydney Testers. We are the Sydney's largest testing meetup group, getting speakers internationally, through online events and in-person events. So this talk is called Simplifying Your HTTP API Testing in C# with restassured.net. This is by the wonderful Bas Dijkstra.
Hello.
Thank you. So
morning, good afternoon, good evening.
Indeed. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, indeed. If people on the people who are watching through LinkedIn, can you just comment in the event if you're having any problems seeing the slides or anything? So this is the start of the event. We'll do a short introduction to Sydney Testers. That's what this is, and in a few minutes, Bas will start his presentation, and there'll be a short Q&A.
Yep.
So, welcome to Sydney Testers. We're a group of volunteers in Sydney with a focus on improving testing. We've been around for, I think, nearly 10 years. I think about 10 years, I think, although with different chairs and different groups of people being involved. We organise monthly talks, socials, and other events for the Sydney Testers community, the Sydney testing community. We have a wide range of local and international speakers. People over the years have spoken for us include Michael Bolton, James Bark, Zoe Tivett, Milan Kaur, Stephanie Russell, Matt Santon-Rutherford, Bas Dijkstra, of course, who spoke before, Nikhil Nigam from Apply Tools, Richard Bradshaw, and Jeananne Harrison. Lots of great names who have been involved with us in the past. We're looking for help. We're looking for people to help us either book and organize events, or particularly to help us host and to join our exec committee. If that's of interest to you, then please send me an email at paulwaltersau@gmail.com. So let me just move to the next page. So tonight's speaker is the great Bas Dijkstra. He's internationally, let me say it again. He's an internationally known test automation consultant and trainer, active for 16 years at least, working on software testing and automation solutions across a wide range of programming languages, frameworks, and technology stacks. He's delivered test automation training to dozens of companies. Sorry about that. And hundreds of conference attendees in the Netherlands, as well as abroad, excellent reviews. And you can find his blog at ontestautomation.com. And you can find him through Bas Dijkstra on LinkedIn through that URL below. So For those of you who are based in Sydney or can come to this, on the 29th of November at 5:30 p.m. AEDT, we're doing Michael Patton, who's a well-known local recruiter here. He's doing a talk on recruiter tips, more engagement, more interviews, and more success. And that will be at Talenza, level 7, 10 Spring Street in the Sydney CBD. And that'll be at 5:30. We haven't yet made a decision whether we'll broadcast it live as well. I need to have a conversation with him about that first, and with the rest of the exec. If it is, then we'll let you know through Meetup and through LinkedIn. And that's the last slide. So I shall stop the screen share. And over to you, Baz.
Thanks so much, Paul. And thank you for that wonderful introduction. And congratulations on almost 10 years of Sydney Testers. I think this is the third
I think it's more than 10
time
years,
on?
actually. Yes, it is. It's the second time this year, actually.
Yes. You're still not tired of me.
Oh, we'll never be tired of you, Baz.
We'll get. Oh no! Wait until after the talk before we
okay, right.
Make come to early conclusions there.
I am optimistic. Anyway, I'll mute myself. You can carry on.
Which is a rare trait for a tester, but
I'm not optimistic about other people's code. I'm not optimistic about that, but I'll let you carry on.
The interesting thing is I'm going to be talking about code that I've written. So this is going to be all kinds of interesting, really. So again, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night. Wherever you are joining us from, whenever you are watching this. As Paul said in his very kind and friendly introduction, my name is Bas Dijkstra. I've been in testing and automation for 17 years, actually. Been doing a lot of building automation, helping teams do better, helping individuals, but helping companies do better. That's what I like doing most at the moment, and that's either through consulting, mentoring individuals. I do lots of training. But tonight or today or this morning, I would like to talk to you about a side project that I've been running for just over a year now. That side project is called restasure.net. I want to share with you a little bit about the background, the backstory, how this came to be, why I started this project, how I started it. I want to show what it is. So the largest part of this session will be me talking you through some of the features of this library and how to start using it, what you can do with it, what you cannot do with it, and what's coming up for the foreseeable future. And also a little bit of background about how you can get involved, because this is all about it. This is an open source library, which means that it's very much open to anybody who wants to contribute in one way or another. So this is not really, it's sort of kind of is a testing talk and an automation talk, but it's also a little bit a talk about open source software development. So a little bit of everything, really. Let's start. Let's follow the advice of Simon Sinek and start with the why. Why did I start? So I think it was about August or September of last year, of 2022. Why I started restasure.net. So I've been using. So I'm just going to assume, and I know that's a very dangerous thing to do. As a tester when talking to a group of testers, but I'm going to assume that you've heard of Rest Assured before. If you don't, basically 30-second intro, Rest Assured is a library, a Java DSL that enables you to write powerful, flexible tests for your HTTP-based APIs in Java using a fluent syntax, providing just the right level of abstraction to enjoy all the benefits of writing your tests in code, without the bother of having to write a lot of complicated code. So I really like Rest Assured. I've been using it quite a lot over the years. I've run quite a few workshops on it, worked on site with clients who were using it. I really enjoyed it, really. And over the last couple of years, I've been getting more and more involved in the C# and the .NET ecosystem, and I do quite a bit of talking and teaching and working on API testing. So basically, I was looking for something that was as easy to use, as flexible as Rest Assured, but in the C# .NET ecosystem, and I couldn't find it. So there are a couple of libraries in the C# ecosystem that allow you to write tests for your APIs. The most notable one is REST-sharp, of course. For those of you who haven't heard about REST-sharp, it's an HTTP library for the .NET ecosystem. And it's great. It's very powerful. It has a lot of features. So this is not, oh, look at how my tool is better than their tool. I positively hate those kinds of discussions. REST-sharp is fantastic. I've used it quite often myself as well. The only thing I'm missing in REST-sharp, or what I didn't really like myself, is it's an HTTP library. It's not necessarily a library that's specifically dedicated or aimed at writing tests. It's a library that makes it easier to interact with HTTP APIs. But unlike Rest Assured in Java, for example, it's not really a library that's specifically written to, specifically dedicated to writing tests. So that was one factor. So I couldn't really find something similar to Rest Assured in the C# ecosystem. And I also had some spare time on my hands, and I wanted to get a little bit better at writing code, at programming. So I thought, well, I was just thinking about what would be a nice hobby, pet, side project kind of thing. And that's when I said, well, why am I not? Why would I try converting Rest Assured to C#? So that in that way, I would probably learn lots of different things about what it takes to write a C# library, what it takes to publish and maintain an open source library, and if it would work out, the C# and .NET ecosystem would now have a library specifically geared towards testing that made it easier for you to write tests for your HTTP APIs. So that's how it started. Started developing. First of all, I had a conversation with with Johan, who's the main developer of Rest Assured in Java. I said, well, is it okay if I put it? He said, well, yes, please do it, because there's been a lot of good feedback, obviously, about Rest Assured. So I'd love to see that come to life in the C# ecosystem as well. So started developing, and I think it was about October of last year that the first version went live. We are now at version 4.10, so a lot has happened in the meantime. The code has gotten a lot better. The number of features that I've added to the library has been in the dozens. And today I would like to show you a little bit about what the library can do, how easy it is to use. I think it's relatively, it's fairly easy to use. And just to show you what you can do with the library, really. For those of you who are familiar with Rest Assured, this will all be very, very familiar. To those of you who are not, pretty much everything that I'm going to show, you can do in Java with Rest Assured as well. With the exception of maybe one or two things, but we'll get there. So without further ado, let's have a look at how Rest Assured works. So I've created a very small shell for a project here. It's basically just an example project, and let's have a look at the dependencies that I've installed just to show you the libraries that we have here. So just like Rest Assured in Java, you use restassured.net. It doesn't have its own test runner or anything. It's a library that allows you to more easily interact with HTTP APIs. So you typically rely on a test runner. In Java, that would be JUnit or TestNG. In C#, that's either NUnit or MS-Test or XUnit. I chose NUnit and the NUnit 3 test adapter to allow me to run my tests in Visual Studio. I chose NUnit. Everything you see in this demo, in this talk, you can do with the MS-Test or XUnit as well. Almost everything. So you typically use a library like Rest, just like you would use Playwright or Selenium, together with a test runner. In this case, that's NUnit. And of course, I've got restassured.net. I'm actually using a beta version here, which has, so this is probably the final beta before 4.2.0 comes out, which will be this week. So this is this is also a little bit of a live test of how well the library works. I'm pretty confident, but well, you never know what's going to happen. So my apologies in advance if I run into any kind of unexpected behavior, but I think we should be good here. So if you actually look at NuGet, you'll see that the latest available, the latest public version is 4.1.0, but what I'm using in the project is actually a beta of 4.2.0. Let's start with a very, very, very basic test. So the test that I'm going to, the API call that I'm going to write a couple of tests for is this one. It's just a very basic HTTP GET that calls a dummy API, which retrieves data for a dummy test user with user ID 1. Their name is Lee and Graham, and they live in Gwenborough. I don't know what it is. Never heard of it. So let's start with a very, very basic test. Just like Rest Assured in Java, restassured.net uses the, let me just copy this one, that saves me a lot of typos. It uses a given when then kind of syntax, not because I'm super into, I am quite into BDD and Gherkin and whatever, not because I think it's everybody should use it, but because it makes my code easier to read. And I think especially when we're writing tests, readability is very, very important. Response log level dot all. There we go. So what this test is doing, so I use a given when then syntax. This also nicely breaks up my test into 3 separate stages. The given where I create a request, the when where I perform the API call, and the then where I'll process or verify the response. So this test now performs an HTTP GET using the GET method on this specific endpoint, and then just writes all details about the response to the standard output. So if we run that test, that's this one. So I'm not doing any checks, any automated verifications right now. I'm just making an API call and logging the response. Which means that, and this is something that's true for most API libraries in code, people don't really tend to use it that way, but I can use libraries like this for exploratory testing, just as I could use a tool like Postman, for example. And the nice thing is that I can then immediately convert this into a test that I bring under version control and run as part of a CI pipeline, for example. So I've made the API call, and this is what it knows about the response. We have an HTTP status code. We have a list of headers here, as well as the same response body that we saw in our browser right here. Which means that rest assured.net successfully made the API call and has received the response. Let's add a couple of verifications. By the way, if I want to log the request as well, I can do that by adding a log statement in the given section as well and assign the right request log level, which allows me to choose add to log, everything, just the endpoint, just the body, just the headers, or absolutely nothing. So again, let's see if we can add a couple of verifications. Of course, let's start with the hello world of API testing, checking the status code. But I want to see a little bit more than that. I don't want to just verify the status code, because status codes are deceptive. They are not a guarantee that everything went okay. It's just an indication. It's the endpoint, the provider telling you things are okay. Never trust them. Always verify. But I also want to check that the, for example, let's check the value of the name, which is equal to Leanne Graham. I can do that by by using the body method, specifying the element that I want to verify through a JSON path expression, and then using a library called nhmcrest to specify the expectation. And in this case, I just want to check that it's that the value is equal to Leanne Graham. And then let's also check that they live in Gwenborough. So that is .address.city. And this too should be equal to Gwenborough. There we go. Let's run that test again. And now it will not just log all the details for the request and the response to the console, but it will also perform all of the verifications. I see a green check mark. I wrote quite a bit of code. If you are anything like me, I wouldn't really trust it, because how can we be sure that the verifications that I've written down here are actually performed? So let's just change the expected value for the name to something else, just to show you that the verifications are actually performed. And the verifications that you think should be performed are actually performed by restassured.net. As we can see, if I specify a different expected value for the name, it's going to throw a response verification exception, which will subsequently make the test fail. And it tells me that I expected that the element selected by this specific JSON path expression, it should match Banana Graham, but it was Leanne Graham instead, which tells me everything I need to know about Leanne. There we go. So this will make it pass again. So this is how you start writing very, very basic tests for your HTTP APIs in restassured.net. Let's copy this one and make it a little bit more flexible and make it a parameterized test. So parameterized test is basically making the same API call multiple times, just with different values for the input and the expected output fields. This is something that's very typical that you'll find yourself doing very often when you're doing API testing. So APIs expose business logic. They algorithms, data. So typically when I want to test specific backend business rules or business scenario implementations, the API is a very, very good and sensible layer or interface to write your tests against. So in this case, I want to test not just that the name for the user with ID 1 is Leanne Graham, but also that the name for the user with ID 2 is equal to Irvin Howell. I'm going to just remove the log statements for a bit. So this is the way you do that in NUnit. I add test cases to my test method, and then I pass in the values for the input and the expected output as parameters to my test method. This is how it works with most testing frameworks that I know, not just in C#, but also in Java, in Python, in JavaScript. You typically you define the data that you want to feed to your test, and then you pass those values to your test method through arguments. So if an argument, the first argument is the user ID, and the second one is the expected name. I can simply parameterize this one by replacing the hard-coded value for the name with the expected name that is listed in the test case. For the user ID, which is still hard-coded here, I've got a couple of options. In the end, it's all about how am I going to define this endpoint. It's just a string, and there are a gazillion different ways to create a string. The easiest, most straightforward way is to just use string interpolation, like this. This works brilliantly, especially in C# and in Python and in JavaScript. In Java, a feature like this I think it has just been introduced in Java 21. But before that, you need to use string.format, which is way clunkier. But it works too. So if that's your preferred way of creating that adding that parameter, path parameter, basically to a string. That's fine. In C#, again, it's just a matter of prepending your string value with a $sign, and you have string interpolation. Of course, you can also use things like a construct like this, a string concatenation. That's absolutely fine too. I just highly prefer string interpolation. There we go. And there's also a more explicit way, which I borrowed from from the original rest assured in Java. I can define a path parameter like this. So I'm defining a path parameter called user ID with this. And in that, if I surround that by these square brackets, which is, so what I've done now is I've defined a path parameter, so user ID, and then I specified that that value of this user ID path parameter should go here. This is just an arbitrary name, so if I want to call it banana, that's absolutely fine, as long as I call it banana over here as well. Let's just run these tests very quickly to show you that this actually does what it's supposed to do. There we go. Both of them pass, and if I log the request, that would have been a good idea. So you can actually see that rest assured substitutes the value of this path parameter in the endpoint. So you can see here that it calls the endpoint with user ID 1 here, and for the second user, it calls the endpoint with user ID 2. Again, this is just yet another way of creating a string. The benefit of this, doing it this way, is that you make it very, very explicit that you're defining and using a path parameter here. But I'm totally fine if people just use string interpolation like this, because that's not banana. This is now, of course, user ID, because it's just the value of this parameter here. The end result is exactly the same. It's just about how you create a string, really.
Sorry, Bas.
Yes.
Can I just make a point? I just want to say something very quickly to those who are Java developers.
Absolutely.
Yeah, in Java, you can actually do a type of string interpolation called using the message format class.
Yep.
So you can just pass in tags for individual variable names, if you want to call it that, and then put the variables at the end. And then
Yes.
it's a bit like a cross between how JavaScript does it and say how C++ used to do it, would do it, say. So I just wanted to add that. I hope you don't mind.
Oh no, absolutely. I think I even explicitly requested you to just interrupt me and say that share everything you want to share. And I think as of Java 21, for those of you who are using Java, Java supports something like this as well. They've been very proud of it, but basically they're now capable of doing something that other programming languages have been doing for ages. But it's a good thing. All languages evolve. Some of them just at their own slightly different pace. So this is just a very, these are still very straightforward GET requests. Another thing another thing that you'll encounter very, very, very often in your API tests is I need to specify request payloads. I need to pass data to an API and not just pull data from an API like we've been doing up to now. There are many different ways to do that, but let's log this just so you can see what's going on. Request log level dot all. I need to pass in a body here, a request body that takes an object or a string. And there, like with rest assured in Java, there are a number of different ways in which you can pass data to an endpoint. I'm going to post a new post object. So I'm creating a new blog post, which I'm sending to an API. And that API is actually when posts. There we go. And then remove this one because I accidentally copied it. Then and the status code should again be 200, I think, which is not very typical for an HTTP post, but maybe it returns 201. We'll see soon enough. But I need to pass in data here using this body method. There are a couple of different ways to do that. I could just write a string body and then enter some JSON string here, which would be fine. That's, however, not very flexible. A much more flexible way of creating JSON or XML payloads is through a concept called serialization. And basically serialization is taking, in this case, a C# object and serializing it to a string kind of format, a format that you can send over the line to the provider, that you can send over HTTP to the provider. So that's one of the very first things that I thought, well, rest assured.net should definitely have this. So I should just be able to create an object and serialize that to either JSON or XML. So let me create a new post. A post has a user ID. It has a title. And it has a body. There we go. And all I need to do now is pass in that post object as the request body, and rest assured.net will automatically convert this object to JSON for me. As you can see, let's run this test. It fails because it does return a 201. I thought this one returned a 200, but more importantly, what it did do is serialize this object for me to JSON. I've defined this one here, and I've used these JSON property attributes to say, well, if this property should be serialized to a JSON property like this. So this is, and because C# objects, you can create these objects and these payloads programmatically. So this is just a much, much, much more flexible way of creating your JSON request bodies. The nice thing about restassured.net and C# in general is that I don't even need to have a strongly defined type like this. I don't even have to have a post like this. I could just say, just make this a var and just create an anonymous object. And if I rename these properties to this. This is what's called in what in C# is called an anonymous object. So it is an object with a structure, but it doesn't have a predefined type. This is even more flexible. And as you can see, this creates the exact same payload. I don't think you can do something like this in Java. I don't think it has anonymous objects unless those have been introduced in Java 21 as well. But this just goes to show you that there are a couple of different ways to do this. I could also do content type, because the way RestAssured.net and also RestAssured in Java works is it looks at the value of the content type header in the request, and that's what it uses to determine should I serialize this to JSON or to XML. So if I set the content type header to, oops, it's going to break now. This doesn't work for anonymous types. I should have known that. Anonymous type serialization only works for JSON, but if I create a new post like this, just a strongly typed object, it should serialize this to XML nicely. There we go. We now have this same post in XML format. So RestAssured.net supports both these formats out of the box, and the actual format into which our payload that's been defined here is going to be serialized is determined by the value of the content type header in the request. And if you don't specify that, just like RestAssured in Java, it defaults to JSON. So if I remove that header again, it will once again serialize my payload object to JSON. How are we doing for time, Paul?
Oh, no, it's all good, mate. Carry on.
Okay. I was planning on wrapping up. There's a couple more features and things that I want to see, but I'm not going to show them to you through programming and actually live coding them, but I want to take you through a tour of some of the issues and the documentation as well. And that should also give you a good overview of all of the other things that are going on. So of course, and like any good library of open source library, all of the code can be found on GitHub. For those of you who are saying, well, how can I use this in my project? Well, just use NuGet. At the default package manager build tool, package manager, just the package manager, not the build tool for the C#.NET ecosystem. As you can see, there's a couple of beta versions available, but the latest stable release is 4.10. 4.20 is coming out this week. I was hoping to sort of kind of do a live. I'm going to publish it right now in this session, but unfortunately, there's some tests that I still want to run in the field with one of my clients, and I'm not seeing them until tomorrow. So, but once that is done, I will, and everything went well, I will publish 4.20. Which has a couple of nice new features. They are listed as unreleased in the changelog right now. The most important one, I didn't even add this to the changelog yet, is support for .NET 8. So for those of you who've been keeping track of the .NET ecosystem, Microsoft now releases a new version of the .NET framework each year. And they alternate between long-term support and standard term support versions. So currently, or until 2 weeks ago, the long-term support version was .NET 6 and the standard term support version was .NET 7. But last week, I think, they released .NET 8, which is now the long-term support version, which means that you'll see a lot of libraries also hopefully very quickly going to support .NET 8 as well. Rest assured, .NET will, from version 4.2.0 onwards. So 4.1.0 can only be used with .NET 6 and .NET 7, but 4.2.0 can also be used with .NET 8. And there's some smaller additions as well. So request specifications are basically objects that you can use to specify common properties for different requests in a single place. There's some improvements there. Another very good one, which I need to write a blog post about, which was actually submitted by a user, which I love and which you should all do. So if there's something, a question that you've got about the library, of something that you say, well, this doesn't really work right, or I would like to see this feature added, please, by all means, submit an issue on GitHub. Most of the improvements have been either through issues that people submitted, which then triggered me to do some research and build some new features for the library, or through pull requests. So people are actively contributing to the library, which is even better. So this one is better support basically for uploading files and other multi-part content through API through using Rest Assured.NET. So I'm quite excited about that one as well. In general, if you say, well, what version did a new a specific feature introduced? You can find that all in the changelog. Basically, like with any library, I would say, well, try to stick to the latest versions as much as you can. I would recommend that for Rest Assured.NET as well, because that's where all the latest new features and the best and the latest bug fixes will be in. It's been, as you can see here in the gallery, it's been a while since I've released an actual new version, because in all honesty, it has been pretty stable and not a lot of issues have been reported. But I'm excited for 4.2.0 and all the new features that it's going to bring, and also because it now properly supports .NET 8. Just to give you a little bit of insight into the background, I've also set up not a release pipeline, but definitely a continuous integration pipeline for the library itself, which means that every time new code is committed and pushed, the package is built, and not just built, it's also tested. That's maybe interesting to spend a couple of minutes talking about how I test the library. The library's test. Let me quickly open up don't save. The library, the repository, the project for the repository itself, which contains the Rest Assured.NET source code, but also the tests. So let me just use this one. This is a very simple test just to see if I can use all the HTTP verbs that are defined in the code. So I test the library. There's not really any unit testing going on, but lots of acceptance tests going on. And the nice thing is my acceptance tests run at the speed of unit tests, which is very, very nice, because what it uses is a library called YAMOC.NET, which is like rest assured RestAssured.NET is a port of rest assured in Java. YAMOC.NET is a port of YAMOC in Java, and YAMOC and YAMOC.NET is an HTTP mock server, where so you can mock APIs. So what I'm doing in my test is I'm using my library, and in this case, I say, well, I want to call a post to this one, and that should not yield an error. It should actually hit an endpoint, hit the right endpoint. And I have lots of other tests here as well. As you can see, these test all the different features of the library. So for example, I want to test that I can actually do a proper verification here, and say that, for example, test that if a verification fails, it's throwing the right kind of exception with the right message, which means that lots of other it's testing all the different features, but also the exceptions that it throws, and the kinds of verifications that is going on there as well. By all means, if you want to contribute to anything or just interested to see how this works, by all means, fork the project, have a look at the source code. If there's anything you think that can be improved, by all means, raise an issue. There's a couple that are open, which is mainly, lots of these are just things that I want to improve at some point. Some of them, so this is just waiting for feedback. This is the one that I need to test in the wild. Support for .NET 8 is an issue. There's a couple of things that I need to research still, or that I want to maybe add someday at some point in the future. If you use the library and see anything you think can be improved or should be improved, by all means, raise an issue on here, or submit a pull request. I am very much open to those ones. So if people want to contribute, and people have contributed over the last year already, which makes me very, very happy. So that's either by some people have contributed by improving the tests. Some people have contributed by improving the continuous integration. So what happens every time I push new code to this repository? And some people have just contributed by sending me improvements for the code itself, which is very exciting as well, because that enables me to learn new things as well. The final thing that I want to show here before we dive into questions is the usage guide, which is a complete overview with examples of all the different features, all the different things that you can do in RestAssured.NET. So if you want to know more about all the different things you can do, you can verify from your responses, it will be, you can find that in the documentation. If you want to know how to create a request, so things like authentication. We didn't really talk about authentication, but RestAssured.NET also supports that. So if I have an API that takes a token or a username and a password, or I want to submit form data to authenticate, to obtain a token, all of those things are supported by RestAssured.NET, because those are things you need when you write tests for your APIs. So it wouldn't be a very useful library if there weren't a lot of if the library wouldn't support it, really. So yes, if you have a question, anything about the library, submit an issue, or hit me up via email or LinkedIn. I'm more than happy to help you out. There's no way I can show everything that you can do with the library in the time that we are given. I am running workshops on this. I'm going to run workshops on, let me just quickly go to my website to show you. So I'm running 3 public workshops on different API testing tools. Most of them have filled up, but there's a couple of places left for a restassured.net workshop in February. That's completely free. It's a 3-hour workshop where we'll go, where you'll be given the opportunity to get hands-on with the library, complete some exercises, and learn how to use the tool, the library, to write tests for your HTTP APIs. So if you're interested, by all means, sign up. There's a sign-up form, very small sign-up form here at the bottom of this page. And let's leave it at that, Paul. I could go on for hours, but I think this is a good time to wrap up for me.
Well, thank you. And I think we should just give you a round of applause. That was great stuff. Thank you so much.
You are welcome.
And I really, I said I've only used Rest Assured a little bit in the past in Java. So I didn't have a lot of experience or a lot of preconceptions coming into this, to be honest. I mean, most of my career doing API testing has been in, basically it's been in Postman. So, so you know, it was really interesting to see, and I kind of like the idea of having just basically doing something with a basic framework as opposed to, you know, which you can pass in the data however you want, store the data you wish, write code the way you want. So yeah, it's really good actually. I enjoyed it. Just a few questions I have. First of all, I want, before I take it upon myself to ask a question, I just want to ask if either anyone on the LinkedIn Live, and you can add a question in the comments, I'll read them out, or if Thomas or is it Benjamin would like to unmute themselves and ask a question, if they have anything they'd like to ask.
I only had a small, minor question, but it's just a bit of an understanding thing. I saw that we had a field called ID, right, where we enter the ID of the object created, and that one got posted to the endpoint. I was wondering why it had to be a unique value, why we could recreate it using the same ID each time.
Yeah, that's entirely because this is just a dummy API that accepts anything. That in a, call it a real world API. So you were talking about the user ID. So we're creating in this case, we are associating a new post, a new blog post that we create with a specific user with a specific ID. So, and of course, a user with a specific can create many different posts. What you typically, the way a lot of these APIs typically work, if you create a new entity, a new piece of data with an HTTP post, for example. So I create a new post that will be assigned a new unique ID. So a post ID. So not a user ID, but a post ID. That's a value that you cannot predict because it's uniquely generated by the provider or by some system that's being called or referenced by the provider. What you can do, one of the features that I did, is extract that value from a response through, like, for example, if I say, well, I've got a place name, this could also be a post ID. I say, well, just extract from the body the element that's being referenced by this JSON path expression, store that in a variable, and, for example, use that in either a subsequent API call, and so a follow-up API call, or maybe in a UI test or in a call to a database. So if you have uniquely generated values, you can very easily extract these with the library as well, and then just reuse them in the remainder of your test.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much, Benjamin. Appreciate it. Thomas, do you have any? Thomas, do you have any questions?
Yeah. Can you hear me, guys?
Yes.
Yes. Great
so
stuff.
I've seen in the changelog that this library has support for request specification and response specification. I'm curious how similar.
Just request specifications.
Request
I know, yes, rest assured in Java also has response specifications. Rest assured.NET doesn't. I don't really find them very useful. That's why I haven't added them yet. But maybe if there's demand for it, I'm more than happy to see if I could add them if people want to use it. But I don't think that was your actual question.
I'm just curious how similar it is configuring such specification in a test compared to the Java library, or how.
Very similar. Let me just have a look at, where is it again? Request specification tests. There we go. So just like the one in Java, I created through a builder pattern. I create a new request spec builder, and I add I can add properties that I want to reuse in multiple requests here. So maybe a base URI or a base path, query parameters, not path parameters, I think, other kinds of headers, authentication information, proxies, cookies. You can add that to the request specification here and then just reuse them in your test. And this will apply all the properties that you defined in the request specification to the request that it's going to be made right here. Basically, just like how it works in rest assured in Java.
All right, that is cool. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for asking.
Thank you so much. I've not had any chats. I've not seen any questions from LinkedIn, so I'm going to just ask a few of my own. First of all, just one question. I know that one of the things that rest assured in Java didn't do greatly. You had to kind of fudge it by creating an object with just a query parameter. With let's say a query method, with support for GraphQL. Do you have any examples of how to write, say, good GraphQL tests using rest assured.NET in a way that's not kind of a fudge?
It is better. That it's not perfect, but I do have support. This is a feature that's not in rest assured in Java.
Yeah.
So I can pass in an object of type GraphQL request here. That GraphQL request object, let me have a, where is it? It is in here. It's a very straightforward object. It has a query, an operation name, and a set of variables. And you can use that. You can create it again using a builder pattern, or just create it directly. The query itself, because that still needs to be a string. So it's not perfect, but I don't have a way, or at least not built into rest assured.NET, to programmatically build your GraphQL query. There are probably libraries that can do that for you and then serialize it to a string. But you need to add that to your project separately.
Do you mind if I could have a go at writing something like that?
Of course, please do.
Because it's the kind of thing I think I probably could do, although I haven't written in C# in ages. But I know quite a bit about GraphQL because we use it a lot at work. So I reckon I could come up with something.
It is a lot of work. So again, right now, if you can find a way to programmatically create a query like this, and then serialize it to a string, or maybe to some other kind of object that's more suitable. But in the end, the request, this object needs to be has to be serialized, and in the end, the query needs to be turned into a string at some point anyway. So that's why I'm taking it as a string at the moment. But if there's another format that's more type safe, I'm all for it.
Thanks. Do you also have support for mutations, or is that something that needs to be added on, directly created through a string?
It's just then instead of query, it's mutation. It's just it doesn't make a difference for the API call. And of course, the response is easy because that's just vanilla JSON. It's the request that's different.
Okay, cool. Thank you very much. That's great stuff. Another question is, and this may be me showing my ignorance regarding Rest Assured, because I haven't used it a lot and I haven't used it in a very long time. Is there support in restassured.net for assertions or checks against the query response times, like the sort of the most basic sort of performance tests?
That is, again, they are not very. It's by the way, I'm not sure if you knew or if you said that, but this is something that Rest Assured in Java can do as well. But there is in response time verification and extraction tests. So I can test, for example, that the response time and then use an Hemcrest matcher again to verify it against a time span. So it should be greater than 200 milliseconds or less than something. So yes, the response time method is the way to do that.
All right, cool, thanks. And are you limited to using NHamcrest, or can you use, say, Chai.js?
Which one? So obviously, from my response, you can infer that the answer is no, or at least not yet.
Oh, sorry. Actually, you can't, because no, that's my fault. Chai.js is just a JavaScript thing. No, sorry, apologies. Carry on.
No worries.
Being a bit,
so
bit silly.
The only
yeah.
So I'm using NHamcrest because Rest Assured in Java uses Hemcrest.
Yeah.
That's the main reason. Of course, you can make this a little bit prettier by statically importing Hemcrest, the library. Okay. So you don't need to have the fully qualified name here. The challenge, unfortunately, the reason I didn't do that, so if I could have done this by saying just using static and then rest. And in that case, I
just call the is object.
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Doesn't actually. The problem is, as you can see, there's also an is object in NUnit. So the reason I'm using the fully qualified name here is because there's a lot of naming conflicts between NHamcrest and NUnit, unfortunately. But you can make it more readable and you can use named imports here. So there, That's another improvement or a thing that may want to show, because it makes my test a little bit easier to read if I don't have an explicit reference to in AmCrest in every assertion. There are ways around it. I just haven't gotten to that yet. Because then it would just read response time is greater than this time span, which is almost plain English. Almost.
All right. Cool. Thank you so much. That's great stuff. All right. If there's any more, I'll just ask one more time if there's any more questions, and if not, then we shall wrap it up. Thomas, Benjamin, any more questions?
No, not from my end. Thank you.
Not from
All
me
right.
either.
Thank you very much. In that case, can we just say thank you to Bas and give him a round of applause? That was great stuff. Really learned a lot. Really
Thank you,
appreciate it.
folks.
Thank you, Bas.
Thank you.
Thank you all for attending. And of course, those of you on LinkedIn Live just as well. It's just that it's a little bit harder to directly interact with you.
It is. It is, but I did try and get people to post questions in the comments, but you know, the numbers dropped off pretty much towards the end.
That's understandable.
But
there's always the recording.
Yeah, that is cool, and I will be posting on YouTube afterwards, within
Awesome.
the next day. But Bas, can you stay on? Can you stay on for a little bit, please? And
Absolutely.
I just want to thank everyone for coming, and wish you all a great day. And once again, thanks so much, Bas. Oh, before you go, actually, Bas, before we finish, is there anything you'd like to promote? Anything that you're doing that you'd like to give a shout out to?
It's no, not right now, other than the free public workshops.
Okay, right, yeah.
That I've talked about. By all means, check those out. I know for a fact that Benjamin is registered for a couple of them. For some of them, even twice. No,
I'll check them out as well. Actually, if they're in a suitable time zone for me, time of day for me, I'll definitely try and come.
They aren't. No, it's 3 p.m. CET, so 3 p.m. my time, which is well suited for East Coast US, for Europe, and for India, but not for Australia and New Zealand.
Well, that's about 5 a.m. Sydney time, I think. So I'll probably just have to get up earlier. But no problems. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for having me once again, Paul. I really appreciate it, and I really enjoy and appreciate everything that you do with Sydney Testers. So
I appreciate it. Please stay on. I'm just gonna end the live stream on LinkedIn because we finished. It will still be up as a replay, so people can watch that as well. And I'll just end the recording now.